All right, so we're doing introductions. We've heard from the Pacific time zone. I think we're in the middle of Mountain time zone. I'm trying to move our way east, and we want folks to say their name, if they're running for office, and what office they're running for, and where they're from. And if you have any public speaking experience. All right, hearing none, let's move on east to the Central time zone. All right, I guess everyone's on the East Coast. Let's try to go from the south to the north, so Florida on up. Hey, Brian from Baltimore. Great.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Any public speaking experience, or are you running for office?
I am not running for office, no. I actually taught 4 semesters of public speaking at a local university a couple years ago.
Oh, you did? Interesting. Okay.
Great. All right, and it sounded like I heard Lou jumping in there.
Yeah, this is Lou Novak. I have been a candidate in the past in Detroit, Michigan, but I've recently moved out to the suburbs and considering running for office against our U.S. Congresswoman if she doesn't step up to impeach. Very little public speaking experience. Thank you.
Great. All right, who else? I know there's a lot of other folks on the call tonight.
This is Mary Sanders in Hartford, Connecticut.
Hi, Mary.
Great.
Hi, I'm running for city council.
Great. And I'm sorry, what town in Connecticut?
Hartford.
Great. I've heard of that.
That's the capital.
All right. Fabulous. All right, who else? Cassandra, did you make it on with audio?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Yes, I'm Cassandra Lenz from Nassau County, which is on Long Island, New York. I'm running for town council, and in the past I ran for county executive and legislator, where I got a lot of public speaking in a frightening way experience. And I also have acting experience on stage in amateur theater. It's not the public speaking that scares me, it's the answering questions that I don't know what they're going to be and sounding like I'm not a complete idiot.
Okay. Well, I think we will get to that. That's great. Thank you. All right. I'm skimming some names on here. Diane, are you on the phone?
Yes, I'm here. And I'm from Fairfax, Virginia, and I have run for office twice, and I thought I would just listen. I wish I had been in Toastmasters before I had run for office, but I didn't. Anyway, just curious. I don't know if I'll ever run again, but.
All right, well, I hope you do, but thanks for joining us tonight. All right, let's see. Who else is on? Aaron, Joe?
Yeah, you got Joe Manchek here. Oh.
Hi, Joe.
Go ahead, Joe.
Hi. I'm a 3-time Green Party candidate for the United States House of Representatives in Ohio's 12th Congressional District, and I had a lot of opportunity to do public speaking during that time.
Good. Great.
And Aaron?
Thanks, Hillary. And thanks, Wendy, for being here. I'm Aaron Fox. I'm co-chair of the Coordinated Campaign Committee. And really happy to see so many folks have gotten on the call. I've got a lot of public speaking experience, behind a microphone, behind a bullhorn, on live and broadcast television, and I'm really happy that Wendy is here to give us advice tonight. This is really important for all of our candidates, and so thanks, everybody, for being here.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you both.
That's Aaron Fox.
Okay.
All right, and then any other, last-minute folks who haven't gotten a chance to introduce themselves, now is the time before we get started.
Hi, my name is Monica James. I'm from Muncie, Indiana. I'm running for Muncie City Council, District 4.
Welcome. Hi, Monica.
Can I just ask everyone, can you please be sure to have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil handy so that you can do these activities with us?
Yes, this is going to be an interactive call tonight, and so there will be some activities in the midst, and we'll do some actual practice, and it'll, I think, be quite engaging. All right, anyone else after Monica who wants to introduce themselves?
Carol Sandy Prisblack, Cheektowaga, New York, running for office for the second time for Cheektowaga Town Council. I guess that's it.
Great. Welcome.
Hi there. She's quite an interesting woman. I talked to her yesterday.
Good. Great. All right.
Are we ready?
I think so. All right. So I'm going to go fade into the background and let Wendy take over, and I'm going to do the clicking on her PowerPoint here. If you are logged in, you should be seeing the presentation at this point. And I will ask at this point if folks could go on mute, that would be great, just so that there's no background noise. But when we open it back up for questions and comments and discussion, we'll undo that.
I'm sorry, I can't see anything. I'm on the phone.
Okay, so if you're on the phone, you're just going to have to listen along. But for anybody who is logged into a computer or using the app on their phone, you should be able to see a presentation. And we'll also make sure this presentation is available for download on the website after the call, as well as a recording of this call. All right, take it away, Wendy.
Well, good evening, everyone. My public speaking background is not really as a candidate, but it's more that I was a public speaking teacher at the college level, and I taught high school students public speaking for many years as well. So a lot of what I've done in the business world, too, I had to speak for classes, I had to speak in my job. So I have had a lot of experience myself doing public speaking. And I just tried to gear this a little bit more towards those of you that are candidates. So the first thing that we were going to do is just, there are a lot of different ways that you can start any presentation. You do not want to start with, I'm going to give a talk about such and such, because that's fairly boring. So I'll give an example of each one of these things that are listed, and then I want you at your own home or wherever you are to please write down a sample of your own. And when I say, for example, the first one is one way to start a speech is to tell a story, you don't have to write the whole story, just write a couple of words to yourself that will remind you of what that story is going to be about. So, for example, many of the candidates talk about where their families come from. Like, you know, Obama said that his father was from Kenya, but his mother's from America. So in my case, I'm just going to tell a short story about my grandmother coming from Norway. Can they see me?
Yes, they can.
Where? Okay. Anyway, when my grandmother came from Norway, she was 15 years old, and she had worked in a teacup factory for a year to help raise some money to come, but she'd basically run away from home because she couldn't stand her new stepmother. So she moved to America and rode on first a ship to get here, and then at Ellis Island she boarded a train and came all the way to Oakland, California. And she was told by her sisters, watch out, be sure to sit by a Norwegian family because they have white slavery in America. She was really scared about that. And when she arrived in Oakland, she heard all her sisters yelling, Constance, Constance, you know, and she knew she was here. So that's kind of how my family first came to America. So I want you to just write any type of story for any type of topic that you might want to talk about. In your case, since you're running for office, maybe you have a little backstory of who you are and how that might coincide with what you're running for. So please just take a minute and jot down a few words about that. And those of you that are interested can share those with us. Does anybody want to tell us a story?
And make sure to take yourself off mute if you haven't already.
Can I say a reaction on stack?
Yeah. Go right ahead, Eric.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm in the library, so I think I'm just going to keep it on mute.
All right. We are hearing you twice over. Hold on. Try again.
Since I'm in the library, I won't be speaking. I'll just keep it on mute the whole session.
That's fine. Does anybody want to share a story that they might use to introduce themselves in a public speech?
And it could be about anything because, you know, maybe in your particular area the taxes are terrible, or maybe everybody's getting their cars taken by the government. It could be anything that you are upset about that you could make a compelling story about, something that from your own experience is actually the easiest to use?
I'll jump in.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Mary. I'm just going to share a little bit about, growing up in a low-income household and learning from my parents about always, caring for people that are doing a little less wealth than yourself. And one of the things that I learned was that I grew up in a housing project, and people knocked on each other's doors and helped each other out, no matter what time of the month, no matter how broke they were. If somebody needed some food, we always had it for each other. And my dad was he worked as he was chief steward in his union, and they never made much money, but he always told me, always stick up for the underdog, because there's always somebody doing a little, having a little more difficulty than you are. So I always look for those people that are struggling, and always stick up for them. And that's one of the reasons that I switched from the Democratic Party years ago to the Green Party, because I realized what was going on with the major parties. And here in the town of Hartford, in one of the richest states in the United States, Connecticut, we have such an income gap, and the people that are struggling the most are not being heard by City Hall. The people that go there and speak up at the council meetings are usually, middle class to upper class, and the people that really need their stories heard need someone like me to represent them, and that's why I'm running.
Woo-hoo! Very good. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to share something?
Yeah, this is Joe Manchik.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. As I said, I'm a three-time Green Party candidate for the United States House of Representatives in Ohio's 12th Congressional District. And before I ran for Congress as a Green Party candidate, the first time in 2016, I often said that I hated politics and I would never consider running for office. But all of that changed when I decided that I wanted to unseat Ohio U.S. Representative John Boehner. I never really had an opportunity to run against Boehner because he quit his job soon after I began attacking him almost daily for the stupid things that he would say as a Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. But I think that my brief campaign against Boehner was a complete success because I still feel like I managed to get rid of him.
Good for you.
Exactly.
All right. Anyone else?
Well, I just want to say that I thought, both of those stories were really compelling. I think particularly Mary, the personal experience that growing up as a child and the lesson your father taught you is, I think many Greens would simply launch into a policy conversation about, why we need to change X, Y, and Z. But I think the way you started with your personal story and then pivoted basically into that policy conversation was really great. And so I think, for me, just hearing that and kind of like breaking that down and helping other people see that sort of technique, I'm hoping that's the kind of stuff that I think will make us stronger as Greens, because without a doubt we have the policies, but we don't necessarily always have the polish when it comes to personalizing it. Everything we think is so, intellectual, just
right.
Like black and white, we have the right ideas, but if if people don't hear it, and when I say hear it, I mean in a way where they really understand it, it's all for naught. And I think storytelling can be a great way to really help connect with people.
The other thing that you'll see is that on the last page, I also give you my phone number and my email. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I'm much more of a phone person than an email person. But if any of you want any additional help after we have this call, as you're working on your campaign, you're more than welcome to call me. There's no charge. I just enjoy helping people. Okay?
Thank
you.
Right. Okay, so the next one is just to ask a question. And my sample for ask a question is, are you one of many who have lost their cars to the city of Philadelphia? 10,000 people lost their cars last year. Were you one of them? Okay, so just any question that you can think of that might start a talk about something that you care about in your campaign. I mean, do you have terrible schools where you live? Do you have some gas plants being built in your neighborhood? Do you have oil plants having explosions in the neighborhood like we do here in Philadelphia? Those kinds of things are things that people can relate to. You know, their kids have asthma, they're concerned.
Lou here. I mentioned that I just moved back into my old neighborhood, and the streets are flooding like they did 50 years ago. So I could ask a question of the neighbors, you know, did your house flood? Is your house still flooding? FEMA was through here a couple months ago, and I can't believe we're still running into this problem.
Okay, that's a very good question because it's something your neighbors can all relate to, and especially since you've been there for all those years in the past, you can still relate to it. So it's definitely a topic, you know, that your neighbors are going to care about. Who else has a good question? Okay, shall we move to a startling statement? About 643,000 Americans have declared bankruptcy annually due to medical bills. It's a pretty startling statement, and it's true. Yeah. Anybody else? Another startling statement.
Another reason to join the Green Party.
Exactly.
I liked how with the question one, I mean, essentially you combined a question with the startling statement. I didn't know that there's 10,000 cars a year. That's a lot.
That's a lot. It's a lot. It's basically taxation without representation. When you get a parking ticket you can't pay, and then they end up taking your car that might be worth $1,000 or $30,000. Right. You know, so a startling statistic is another way to start a suit. And 2/3 of Philly kids can't read at grade level in the 4th grade. Can you hear me?
Craig, I had to mute you. There was a lot of feedback.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
What's a startling statistic that you can share? You can make it up if you don't know one.
Just don't do that on the campaign trail.
Yeah, not on the campaign trail, but for us it's fine.
Right.
20 to 30 years is all it will take right now for us to be out of most of our oil in the United States.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That actually might be good news.
Yep. Yep, go for it.
Muncie, Indiana is 29.9% residents in poverty.
What's the percentage again?
29.9%.
Oh, that's high. Wow. Thank you. That's a very good example.
David, you were muted, so there was some feedback at some point, but feel free to share what you wanted to share. David, can you hear us? All right, well, David will chime in at some point. Anyone else want to share a startling statistic or statement?
Sure, I'll share one.
Okay, great.
In 2016, Barack Obama dropped over 26,000 bombs on foreign sovereign nations.
On where?
On foreign sovereign nations, on several nations.
Whoa.
In 2018, Donald Trump dropped over 43,000 bombs on foreign sovereign nations. Not one word of this was mentioned in the Western mainstream.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Okay, those are very effective examples of startling statistics. Those would be great to use. You just want to be sure whenever you... Whoa.
I think, Stephen, I think that was you. So I don't know if you're on both the phone and the computer at the same time, but you can't do that.
When you have a statistic that's startling or even you just need to be able to show where it came from and that you know that it's true, that it's not something you just, brought out of your head like Trump does. Anyone else have one? Okay, a rhetorical statement is basically a question you don't need to have answered. An example of that would be a woman asks her husband, "Do you love me?" And he says, "Is the Pope Catholic?" Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing that you can use. You don't really want the audience to respond. It's just a call to a rhetorical question, one that you don't expect an answer to. Anyone have one of those?
To me, it might be something like, who here wants to have their children grow up in a world where, and fill in the blank with some horrible thing, right?
Right.
Because the answer, of course, is no. I don't, who wants to have their children become climate refugees?
Excellent.
Right? Like that would be a great, an example.
Very good. Very good. Anyone else? Okay, another one is to start with a problem that everyone has in common. Do you worry about paying for your children's college education?
Yep.
You do? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Can they hear us?
Yeah.
Another one is to tell them about yourself. And we all have our own stories, and there are many things that you can tell people. You don't necessarily want to share everything. But I'm a Californian, and I just moved here almost 3 years ago. I lived on 5 different boats over 9 years in the San Francisco Bay Area. And my last boat was a 1955 52-foot Chris-Craft Constellation that was 3 stories high, quite large, and I paid $75 for it. And I lived on that boat for 5 years. So that's sort of a unique story, I think, that I have in my life. Anybody else have something to tell about yourself?
I think you're a hard act to follow, but I'll try. Something that might surprise people about me. People know my usual thing. I worked in social services for 30 years, and now I want to, serve the people in another capacity. But most people don't know that I love playing drums. I love playing the hand drums, congas, African drums, bongos, anything I can get my hands on. People are surprised that I have that kind of rhythm.
Wonderful. As a teacher, there was an activity I used to do with my students, and it was called Create a Me box about yourself. And they each found their own box. Some were small gold boxes, some were great big cardboard boxes. But the thing was that on the outside of the box, they put pictures from magazines and all kinds of things that everyone already knew about them. But inside the box, they had to put things that nobody knew about them except maybe themselves and maybe their immediate family or close friends. And it was really fascinating. One example of that was I had a very large African-American student in my class that was a football player. He was a little scary looking when I first had him, and he had a very upsetting experience when he was going to camp when he was 10. He went there with his best friend, and his best friend drowned. And so inside his box, he had all of his report cards from like 1st grade, and now he was entering 12th grade. And he said when his friend drowned, he'd always had horrible report cards. But after his friend drowned, he decided he was going to graduate from high school for both families. And so you can see that his grades just keep getting better and better and better. And then this kind of scary-looking big, like 300-pound guy handed out the full-size candy bars to everyone in the class. Mm-hmm. And he just melted our hearts. So a lot of times the things that you can tell about yourself are very personal, and you can touch the people in your audience, and that can help you get votes. if they realize that sometimes it's a really sad experience you've had, like you've had a child drown, or you've had a child shot, or, many of the horrible things that happen in this world. And if you're not afraid to be vulnerable and share that with your audience, sometimes it really gets them involved with you. Okay?
It's about humanizing yourself.
Yeah, it humanizes you. Instead of many politicians, to me, kind of all look the same in their dark blue suits with their red ties, and you can't really differentiate them. But when you hear their stories, then you realize that they are all very different people. Anybody else have a story about yourself?
Yeah, there's Stephen.
Yep, Steve.
Hi there.
Stephen? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Yes.
Okay. Well, people often ask me, it says, what brought you out west? And I said, well, I grew up in Connecticut, and so that makes me an Easterner by birth and throughout most of my history of education. But when it came on down to the West, one of the reasons why I wanted to leave was the pollution levels were so high, the waters were contaminated. And so one day I decided I was going to go and apply for applications for different locations out west with the Bureau of Land Management. And I finally got a call after about 110 applications being sent out from a place called Moab, Utah. And the supervisory engineer there, who wanted me to work a 100-man camp and be the work coordinator and engineering technician for it, asked me, what did I know? And he said, I know you've got an education, but what do you know? And I said, well, I went to a college of agriculture, and I know how to, I took actually an entire course in power shop and welding. And he said, that's the ticket. When can you be out here?
That's excellent. Very good. Very good example. A famous quotation is usually pretty easy to come up with because, so many people that are well-known, authors, politicians, all kinds of people have said things that mean a lot to us. And one of my favorites is when President Kennedy, during his inaugural speech, he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. When you're running for office, I think that's a really important thing to think about is you're just one person, but how are you going to really make a difference for your community? Anybody else have a quotation they'd like to share? All right, let's go on to the next thing then.
Become the change
right.
you want to see.
What?
How was I saying become the change you want to see?
Oh, that's excellent.
Yep.
Very good one. Very good one.
Certainly I hear a lot of local candidates quoting, Jill Stein, we're the change that we've been waiting for, and that's certainly the type of thing that's very appropriate to do. And, yeah.
I have one.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I am you. I was you. I will become you.
One more time.
I am you. I was you. I will become you.
Okay.
Who said that?
I did.
Okay. I also today I came across a speaker that does a series of videos, and they are free of charge. I mean, I'm sure he sells his books and things, but his name is Jay Townsend, and he has coached over 300 politicians in many, many states in the United States and in other countries. But I really recommend that you look him up. And he goes there are 4 videos that he includes in this series, and it's called How to Run for Office. So if you're running for office, I think that it could really help you. Also, there are an awful lot of really excellent books that you can use to help in preparing yourself. There's a book, Great Speeches for Better Speaking, How to Write and Give a Speech, The Complete Guide to Public Speaking. There are many, many of these books, and it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Speaker, Leader, Champion, Voice and Speaking Skills for Dummies. All of those are helpful. I used several of them in preparing my presentation tonight. Even though, like I said, I taught public speaking quite a bit, you can always pick up more from other people. Someone mentioned Toastmasters. When I was, just before I owned a photography studio for 10 years, I took a Dale Carnegie class, and it was excellent. It was a once-a-week type of activity for maybe 10 weeks or so, and every week we had to do another speech in front of all the people in the class. And after that, I've had to, in almost all my jobs, I've had to do a lot of presentations, and it was really, really helpful. It was very different than your normal public speaking classes in college or in high school. Just having to be in front of all those adults every week was very challenging. And their stories were very different than what you would have heard in your classroom. Okay, door-to-door speaking to neighbors, 1 to 3 minutes. I gave kind of a sample on here, and then after I came across this gentleman who does the public speaking course for people that are actually politicians, he said that it's important to really let them know what is the issue, what are the issues you're really standing for, and not like, hey, I'm Joe, I'm your neighbor, I'm running for. So if you let them know what you really are standing for, then they're going to connect with you better than if you just say, hey, I'm so-and-so running for office. So I'd appreciate your signature to help me be on the ballot in November. I want to represent Philadelphia or wherever you're from. Will you join me in my efforts? Thank you. And hopefully when you go to some of these people's, the neighbors' homes or wherever, you may get some of your volunteers. You may get other people that will put on an event for you or people that will get signatures for you. So if you feel like you've really made a connection, it's not a bad idea to ask. I used to be a DJ on the radio, not for a long time, but for, you know, a semester when I was in my 50s. And so I did a lot of radio shows, like 1 to 4 a week. And these, I just came up with a basic kind of questionnaire that a DJ might ask you. So, Michael, please tell us about yourself. And you would go in and, you know, tell them what you're running for. Who are you? Tell them a little bit more. Why are you running for whatever it is you're running for? And hopefully you have at least maybe 3 good reasons why you're making this effort. And why do you think that we should vote for you? Like there are probably a lot of other candidates. How do you stand out? And what qualifies you to serve as this candidate? Do you believe there's a need for a change? And what are the 3 main issues that you would address if you were elected? So those are just some, you know, some types of things that you might get asked if you were to be interviewed. There's a basic outline. Obviously, some of you are much more experienced speakers than others. The gentleman who taught public speaking for a few years, obviously you're much more experienced. But what I found was I had most of my high school students even give public speaking, you know, presentations, even in just regular English classes. And this basic formula is so easy to follow that pretty much anyone can give a decent speech if you just follow this. So your introduction, you choose one of your openings, you tell a story, you ask a question, whatever one you would have chosen. And the thesis statement, it's the one sentence that tells what the whole speech is about, plus your 3 main reasons that you believe this. So reason 1, whatever it would be, and then you give a story and another story. And stories are actual things that have happened in your life or one of your friends' lives or that you've read about, but somehow they're a story. Then the second reason that you are running, in a story and another story. Reason 3, a story. Now, I'm going to give you a sample speech as if I were running for the school board. And the conclusion, again, you repeat your thesis statement, the one sentence that tells what the whole speech is about. And then again, you say your reason 1, your reason 2, your reason 3, and then you have a call to action. Like you're asking them, so are any of you able to put on an event for me? Are any of you willing to get petitions signed for me? Whatever it is that you want to call to action. If you watch the movie that is about Ocasio-Cortez, it's Taking Down the House. And you see that in her presentation, she does this at the end. Whenever she speaks, she asks for people to help her. I heard Obama speak many times, and he always told everyone that he couldn't do this alone, that he needed us to help him. If people think you want them to help you, they're much more likely to do that because they don't want to impose if you don't want them.
Right. But in an inspirational way,
yes,
as opposed to a guilt-tripping way, right?
Exactly. So, and then in your conclusion, that would be the next page. Okay. You request a call to action. You close with a story. If you can, you make them laugh. You close with inspiration. And you summarize the main points of your speech. And at the end of the speech, you look out into your audience. And when that first person claps, you look at them, you mouth, thank you. And you continue to do this. You see someone else that claps, you say thank you silently again. And it's the pattern of clapping tends to pick up. And you always end the speech with a call to action. For example, volunteer for my campaign, lead a fundraiser, donate funds. Who knows, you could get lucky. Somebody might have some money. Okay. And then I wanted to just give you a sample of, like, if I were running for office, a speech that I might give. And, okay, it's right here, but hold on one second here. It was right here. Okay.
Always practice, of course.
Yes. Okay. Oh. All right. If I were running for the school board of Philadelphia, okay.
Which unfortunately is not an elected position here.
Oh, it's not?
No, it is not.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We finally got a local control school board, which is mayoral appointment.
Okay.
And before there was a state takeover. Whole other story. But
okay.
We digress.
All right, so I'm going to start my speech with a story. Okay. When I was in the 3rd grade, I wasn't picking up that reading thing very well. I was struggling a lot with being able to read. I am one of those ADD kids, but I didn't know that till I was in my 40s. So my parents obviously didn't know it either. And my older sister was in 5th grade. She wasn't doing too well in school at that time either. So even though the teachers would give you all A's and a B, that doesn't mean that you necessarily were really getting it. So luckily my parents knew the reading teacher at the high school. And for several months, Mrs. Freed tutored both of us. And once she was done with us, we both became really good readers and writers. So I ended up, when I got to high school, I tutored for Mrs. Freed in her reading class. So I taught kids in the high school class to read. And then when I went away to become a teacher, I was part of a program at San Francisco State called the Center for Reading Improvement. And Dr. Costello ran this program for 26 years. And what he did was he trained us. When I was in the program, there were 200 of us. And every one of us was sent to each individual home, and we tutored one child once a week in reading and writing. And he taught us how to test them, evaluate what sounds they knew and didn't know. He gave us games to teach them this information. He gave us activities to be able to get them to tell great stories that we were their secretaries. it was an incredible experience. And I recently reconnected with him, and he let me know that in 26 years of running this program, on average, with students receiving 15 to 20 tutoring sessions, they improved 3 grade levels in reading. Right now in many of the states, they are planning to have students that don't read well after 3rd grade. They're planning to have them repeat that grade. I would have been one of those kids that probably would have been asked to repeat a grade, which I don't think would have benefited me, to tell you the truth. So my thesis is that I believe that every elementary, junior high, and high school in the Philadelphia School District should have a learning center. 2/3 of Philly students cannot read on grade level in the 4th grade. I've tutored many of the students in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade in the Philadelphia schools, and I can tell you that they learn just as well as anybody else in any of these other schools. I also did kindergarten intervention in Oakland, and I ran a peer tutoring program in Oakland for 3rd to 5th graders tutoring each other. I've also run 2 other tutoring centers at a junior high and a high school. I believe that having students having students repeat a grade is very expensive, and it does not benefit the students. And this has been found through a lot of research. A few of the students that I tutored in Oakland were from Afghanistan and from Mexico. They only tested those students at the end of the year in English. They could read and write fine in their own languages, but they weren't doing very well in English. So some of the students, when they ask them to repeat the grade, either they become bullies or they end up being bullied, and it can also help hurt their self-esteem. So the school to prison pipeline is avoidable. Provide training in the trades. I had a race car team when I was a high school teacher. We taught the kids to work on the cars, paint the cars, drive the cars, and there are a lot of opportunities in that field. There are also so many programs to be beauticians, welders, carpenters, all of those different things. The regional occupational programs do very well in California. I don't know about out here. And provide counseling, after school and evening programs for students and their parents. Especially a lot of the parents that come from other countries, they need to be tutored and to learn English as well in order to be employed. So these are the 3 reasons why I believe that every elementary, junior high, and high school in Philadelphia, and in the whole United States actually, should have a learning center where students can be tutored one-on-one. And if I had found my glasses, I could see this. And since 2/3 of the students are not reading on the 4th grade level when they're in 4th grade, the school to prison program could be avoided. So I think it's very important that we not continue with these terrible systems that are now in place.
Great. Very nice.
Okay, so the next pages that you have are just about me. It just tells some of my background about some of the things that I've done in my life. I went on an Obama tour in 2008 because my son used to invite me out once a year, and he'd pay for my flight and pay for me to visit for a week. And he called me and asked me to come for July 4th weekend, and then he said, the next day, he says, Mom, how about you come to Iowa instead? I said, what is in Iowa? And he said, well, Obama's running, and my girlfriend has designed Obama T-shirts. So we went for a whole week and traveled across. We heard him speak 5 times. And I think one really important thing I learned from that was he gave the exact same speech all 5 times, and it was flawless. It was perfect. It was beautiful. You don't need 7 different speeches. You just need one great one. Have your friends listen, practice it. We visited Obama's Chicago headquarters, and he also had a very intensive volunteer training in California that we were able to attend. So we got interviewed by the New York Times and several other newspapers because actually at the beginning of that campaign, there weren't that many people there. they were looking for people to interview. So anyway, you can see I helped coordinate a fundraiser for Paul Glover, who was running for the governor of the state of Pennsylvania. And there's a lot of different things that I've been involved with that you can look through yourself. I appreciate you coming on with us tonight, and I hope this is helpful. Like I said, you're more than welcome to call me if you think that I could be of any help to you. And maybe we'll see you at the convention in Massachusetts, in Salem, Massachusetts, at the end of the month. All right? So that's my phone number, 650-389-4213. And again, I'm much more of a phone person, so please, if you want to talk, just give me a call. Thank you.
And what I'll do is I'll hang out for another couple minutes, and I'll type up all of the books that Wendy recommended and her contact information in the chat box. But certainly, we have a few more minutes, and we can stay on for a little bit while longer. So if people have any questions or comments, if anyone wants to, critique Wendy's little impromptu speech here, I think we're certainly open for more dialogue and discussion. And, as we also recognize at the beginning, there's lots of expertise in the room.
Definitely.
And so if people have other experiences, please share them. So, I would say, I think as much as, Greens like to think that there's nothing to learn from the major parties, there are things to learn. And when Wendy was telling me about, the idea that Obama gave the same speech 5 times, that I never really thought about that. And I think for a lot of us, we would think, well, I have so many things to say, and I have to get them all out. And why would someone who's heard me say the same thing, want to hear it again? And I think there's something to be said for this, don't have 7 crappy speeches, have 1 really amazing speech, because 9 times, hopefully you're seeing mostly different audiences, and the people who are the repeat customers, that's your fan base. They want to hear you say those things. How many of us go wild when Jill says the same thing we heard her say 5 times before, right?
Exactly.
This is what we came for. And so, I think, having 1 really good, start to finish, I think the technique for how to start and the call to action is huge. I think also when different contexts lead to different calls to action. And so I can imagine a candidate giving a speech at a house party, and that call to action is basically donate to my campaign, give me money.
Or does anyone else want to give me a house party?
Or volunteer, right? But if you're giving a bigger, more public speech where people are, not necessarily already supporters, the call to action is really just join my campaign, join my movement, sign up, be a part of this, vote for me. That's sort of more that broader ask. So, I don't know, that's just some of the things that I took away from your presentation, and if there's any other comments or questions, we would love to hear them.
Aaron Stack.
Aaron, go right ahead.
Thank you for a really nice presentation, and that was really informative, Wendy. Folks, your public speaking, it really starts with your messaging. So you want to make sure that you have really good message development when you develop your stump speech. And you want to keep a consistent stump, but you do want to alter it so that you can say your stump in different lengths for different situations, right?
Well, this is very
Sometimes
true.
you might only have a minute to get your 3 key issues in. Sometimes you might be given a 30-minute speech. So you want to make sure that you practice your stump at different lengths. And one thing that's really important, when we think about public speaking, a lot of times we think about just giving a speech. But a lot of times there's reporters at these speeches, right? We're at press conferences, or maybe we're doing a live interview on television. And so when we're doing public speaking with a reporter, what we have to remember is, we have to stay on message. You don't really want to get knocked off message. And reporters tend to do that. They'll ask you questions that are outside the context of your messaging. One important trick that you can remember is called a turn and pivot. We've all seen politicians do it. It's when the reporter asks them a question and the politician turns and pivots back to their messaging and says, yeah, that's a really good point that you just made there, but I wanted to let you know that it's important to, and then go on to discuss your messaging. So, you know, those are just a couple of little tips that I have that'll help your public speaking. You know, it's really important to focus on your public speaking. You should practice your stump speech over and over and over and over again so you can say it forward, backward, up and down, and in your sleep. When you can do that, you're going to have confidence when you go out and speak in public, and that's real important as well. When we're well rehearsed in what we have to say to the public, we're going to be confident in expressing it, and that's half the battle in public speaking right there, if you ask me. I mean, I can just think back to college, to dynamics of communication, and some of the people in that class were scared to even get up there and say anything the first day of class. And by the end of the semester, everyone was getting up there and doing a really good job at conveying a message. So
True.
A lot of practice, stay on message, and you know, and make sure you have fun and smile and let that shine through. Over.
And yes, David, we can email out the slides. The other thing I want folks to know is that the slide deck as well as the recording will go up on the GPUS website, so which is our more internal-facing website, so not gp.org, which is sort of the more external website, but gpus.org, which is where committees and other, you know, so there's more internal documents. So you want to basically find the Coordinated Campaign Committee site, and then we have a link to webinars, and if you scroll down, and I'm also going to put this link in the chat box, you will find recordings of all of our prior calls and other PowerPoints and a couple of videos from both Aaron and myself. So that's where it will be later tonight.
Thank you for coming on the call with us. We enjoyed spending some time with you.
And this was fun because Wendy has not really ever been active at the national level. She's been local, you know, Philadelphia, a relatively new green, and started to get active at the state level, and then wham, I was like, you're going to do this national call with me, and it'll be great. So
she didn't tell me it was a national call. She told me about it.
So anyway.
I was thinking it was local.
Yeah, well, yeah, same difference. Anyway. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night, and good luck with your campaigns. Please keep in touch with the CCC so that we know what you're up to. And I think we're actually going to have a special call in 3 weeks, the 30th, where we're going to talk about voter databases. And we're also going to be doing some in-person campaign training at the national meeting in Salem. And it is not too late to register and attend. So that's it. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.